great story that my dad told me when I was about 7 years old. He came back from a recording studio, and he said he was warming up, and it just so happened that Duke Ellington was in the studio next door, and so he popped in while my dad was just doing his warm-ups, and when he realized that Duke Ellington was there watching him, he started doing a medley of his favorite Ellington tunes, throwing in all his favorite twists and turns, right? And after that, Duke came up to him and put his hand on his shoulder, and he said, "Now that's the way my music was meant to be played." And I'll never forget that, because then later on that year, he took me to see Duke perform live, and unfortunately that was my last chance. He passed away less than a year later, so I did get to see him once. But I think what he represents, and also what my father represents, especially in regard to his drawing influences across many genres. He didn't just study jazz, he was equally trained in classical, and you can probably find, if you analyze the structure of this beginning part, you'll probably find more in common with Stravinsky, Bartók, and Shostakovich than you will with any of the jazz greats. But that's fine. I mean, what he's doing is building on history without necessarily repeating it. So there is a historical influence. It's like an evolution. And this is something that you can all think about as you're working on your own projects, is by drawing on influences across multiple genres and figure out a way to differentiate your sonic palette, to distinguish your individual sound. Whatever it is about your individual sound that you want as your trademark or your brand, you can figure out how you can isolate those elements and differentiate your sonic palette to be able to make your music recognizable. They say the rule in great improvisation or great composition is fulfill your listeners' expectations about 50% of the time, and then surprise them the other 50%. If you fulfill their expectations too much, which I know a lot of music supervisors would probably like you to do, then it becomes boring. The music becomes predictable. People can kind of guess where it's going, and they start tuning out. If it becomes too surprising, then it's like, at first they're like, "Oh wow, that's cool. Oh wow, there's another one. Whoa, oh man, oh it's too much," and then it becomes overwhelming, and then you shut it out, or the average listener would shut it out for the same reason. So you want to kind of pick something in the middle, and here. All right, so C, B flat, E flat, A flat, D natural. All right, so essentially, if you want to refer to that without doing a slash chord, you can call it a C. It's a C minor 9 with a +5. Okay, there's the minor 9, right? And instead of a perfect fifth, you've got a raised fifth. All right, but then, well, isn't it also like an A flat 2 over C, right? But then, so it could be an A flat 2 plus 4 over C. Yeah, you can get really kind. This is a great chord by itself. It's a B flat 7 with an added 4. I've got the third with the fourth added below, but then we put that on top of C. So, how does the chord function? Well, the answer is you have to hear it in context, okay? And so you have, I gave you 3 different ways of writing out that chord, and then you just have to remember the story. This is a true story. It happened decades ago, probably 50, 60, 70 years ago. Hollywood movie mogul listening to playback, large orchestral scoring session, and all of a sudden he told him to stop the tape. I said, "What is that sound? It's a horrible sound." And he told his assistant, "Go find out what that sound is." The assistant came back about 5 minutes later and said, "I found out what the sound is, sir. It's called a minor chord." And so the mogul told his secretary, "All right, take a memo. I want you to send this out to all the film composers. No more minor chords will be used in any film of mine." okay? So, you know, if you can't get a minor chord past somebody in charge, then, you know, you might as well just throw something really polytonal and wild at them, because it just depends on how they're looking at it, how you present it. That's a true story. It's Andre Previn wrote the book No Minor Chords, and that's just one of many stories of things that he went through. He worked with Claire Fisher for over 20 years, and I started out as his assistant. Later on, I was his co-writer, finally ghostwriter later on, and so I got to work with Prince for 24 years. And you know, some people say that the reason for that long-term working relationship was because we actually never met him. I met him one time at the Grammys when we did a performance together, but other than that, he was supposed to come to the very first Claire Fisher recording session in 1986 when he asked him to write an orchestral arrangement for the Parade album, the orchestral arrangements for the Parade album. He couldn't make it to the session, but he was so happy with the result at the end that he called up my dad and he said, you know, if I had been there, things might have gone differently. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it just would have been different. So for that reason, I will never attend a Fisher recording session. And he never did. He never did in all those years. He just, you know, he sent the tapes, later on Pro Tools files. We added orchestra, and that also made it very easy for me to do the ghost writing. And then later on, you know, when he found out, there was already this history of stuff that I had contributed. So it was like, okay, so you know, here we go. We're just continuing on. But what I would like you to do is put all this complexity aside for a second and try an exercise when you get home. It's actually a series of exercises. Take just a regular basic root position triad and take it around the circle of fourths as opposed to the circle of fifths. Circle of fourths, you know, when you're going C, F, B flat, E flat, then each chord you play is becoming the dominant of the next chord when you go in the direction of fourths. And take all these, you know, root position chords down around the circle of fourths. Change directions, you know, don't go all up or all down. Change directions at random. And then do that with the, you know, the inversions, and then do that with all the different types of seventh chords. And so what you should be able to do is, the thing that I find happening a lot with private students is they're fine, you know, when we're just getting through the basic flat keys. Once we get to D flat, then we get to G flat, then you have to make that M harmonic shift in your brain. Now we're F sharp, actually, because we're leading to B, E, A, E. Okay, so the point is you want to be able to do these exercises in a way so that you don't have to slow down. You can just keep on going. Don't even think about it. Try and, you know, talk with a family member while you're doing these exercises. And then there's, you know, there's the exercise where you can go to the next closest inversion. So root position C major, second inversion F, first inversion B flat, and then it just, you know, keeps on repeating like that. Now you can do it with, you know, you can do that with all the seventh chords too, right? Whoops, sorry. You can do that with all the seventh chords. Now that's just closed position. What about open position, right? Then there's go through all of those, including, you know, unusual. You can start on a second inversion, take to the next closest inversion, right? So keep on going through all those chords. Do the minor chords, right? Never mind about that. What that guy from the studio said. And you know, any chord that you can think of, get to the point where that becomes second nature. Because what you will find then is that you can take songs that you know, played throughout your life in let's say one or two particular keys, and then you can start taking that song around the circle of fourths. Start out with a simple tune that you know had memorized for a long time, and take it around the circle of fourths. You don't want to, you know, the goal is to play it in all 12 keys, but you don't want to play it in C and then go and try and play it in D flat. Go to F next, so there's just one scale note that's changed. And then do it in B flat, and then E flat, and so there's a gradual transition as you're going through. And what you'll find as you play this song in different keys is that because of the physical nature of the keyboard, dealing with the black and white keys, is you might notice a voicing in a different key that you hadn't come up with before in the original key. And then you can apply that back to the original key. That's 12-part harmony. All I did, but it doesn't sound atonal. That was every single chromatic note. What I did was I played a C augmented, and then a B augmented, and then a B flat augmented, and then an A augmented. So you've got a lot of major thirds in there and some minor thirds. So it's a very consonant sound, although it's polytonal. You can do that with the 12 notes in you can do that with diminished chords too. Use your 4 diminished chords, then an octave higher. Use a secondary diminish, and then after that, just add the other 4 notes. So these are hopefully some interesting things for you guys to take a look at. I don't even know how many octaves we have on the piano, but think of each one differently, right? And when you think about that, and you make your writing octave specific, so that you think outside of the octave first of all for your harmony. Think past the 13th. This is, okay, so we have nice tertiary C major 13 plus 11, right? Well, or D over C major 7. Why don't we just continue on and make it D major 7 over C? And then, why not just add an E major 7? So, there are plenty of ways to do that and still keep it tonal. That's just one example right there. Consider, if you're doing Finale or Sibelius or whatever notation software you use, consider doing your playback with just a keyboard sound and hear the orchestral instruments in your head. Don't get used to what the samples, because remember, whatever those samples are, the best library right now, in 10 years, you're going to think, oh my God, I can't believe they thought that sounded realistic. Think back to listen to these old TV shows from the 80s and 90s and listen to those samples that they used on there. It's just amazing. But that was, it's the same thing like the picture quality, the resolution and everything. So there will never be a substitute for live instruments and the literally hundreds of thousands of nuances that a single great player can do on his instrument. No matter how many different articulation options they give you with all the different sound libraries.